Hello, all. I'd love to talk about the pressure to agree. This topic has been swirling in my field for a while now. I think it's obvious to all of us, especially in the U.S., most people consider themselves deeply divided on so many important topics. I think it's obvious to all of us that much of the U.S. and honestly the world is deeply divided on so many important topics. But what I'm observing, even inside communities that seem aligned, spiritual communities, ideological groups, places where intelligence and critical thinking exist, I'm noticing a pattern. It's not always loud. It's not always obvious, but it is deeply impactful. And that pattern is this invisible pressure for sameness and agreement. Not only the pressure to agree, but also the subtle reinforcement of the idea that if I'm right, you have to be wrong, or you must be wrong. Here's how it shows up. When disagreement arises around something we feel passionately about, there's often this subtle reaction inside of us. It can trigger self-doubt or a sense of unsafety that pushes us into separation. Sometimes it even escalates into creating us and them, or a villain story in our mind about the other person. Most of the time, this happens so subtly we barely catch it. And let me be clear, I am no stranger to this. I am not speaking as though I'm totally beyond it. What I am saying is that through years of gentle contemplation, I've come to recognize this pattern in myself. And because I see it in me, I also observe it in others, in the collective. And I feel it's something we desperately need to talk about. I'll give you a recent example. A while ago, I posted something that was a hot topic. A stranger commented, and the way she wrote it, the way it landed for me individually, was an invalidation, a public invalidation. So, of course, my immediate response was defense, separation, and I reacted from that place. But as the conversation unfolded, I realized something. She wasn't actually trying to invalidate me. She was simply inviting me into a deeper question of my own perspective. Once I saw that, I could soften. I could name my trigger and keep engaging. Was it perfect? No. Did we end up agreeing? No. But that's not the point. The point is, I've set as an intention for myself to engage with others to the best of my capacity, mindfully, respectfully, holding tension for many truths to coexist in the same space. And that is the sentence I'm wanting to accentuate in this conversation. The art and intention of engaging with others in civil discourse, mindfully, respectfully, holding tension that their truth gets to coexist in the same space as my truth. And when I fail at that, and I do, I hold myself accountable. Why? Because I believe it is essential for leaders to be able to hold that tension well, with grace and respect, to be effective leaders. There's no perfection here, but there must be intention. You know, I'll go even deeper into a different example. If I have experienced abuse or what I perceive to be a lack of integrity on behalf of a leader that I have followed or that I've been in their realm, under their flagship, whatever you want to call it, I do my very best to always hold the practice. I would never publicly say something that I have not privately confronted them with. This pattern that we see of pressure for sameness, for agreement, in order to be legitimized as spiritual leaders, this is a pattern that has repeated in different conversations where the roles were reversed, where I wasn't the one triggered, but the other person was. And it's been in this repetition of this topic coming up over and over again. I feel my higher self tapping me on the shoulder. Hey, pay attention. This matters. So I'm here reflecting this with you. How do we stand in our truth fully while also allowing enough space for others to stand in theirs, in our presence? Well, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? For me, I think it begins here. Whatever we perceive as source, God, creator, creatrix, whatever, it's clear to me that God values diversity. And if we claim to want to represent or reflect the divine, then that has to mean we are called to value diversity as well. Sameness is not divine. Sameness is a construct of control. Political control, religious control, societal control. Agreement is not a sign of righteousness or correctness. In fact, I would say it's the sickness of needing to feel that we're right in our belief, and that in order to be right, someone else has to be wrong. that really is the source that perpetuates all separation, suffering, war, conflict on this planet and beyond. Our entire society, from the moment we enter school, reinforces sameness and agreement as the standard to belonging. And so all of us are swimming upstream against this indoctrination. Even in groups that appear to be celebrating difference, such as, let's say, the LGBTQ plus communities, plural. There can still be rigid rules about how to properly be different in these communities, which in a way collapses back into that same original programming. So here's what's true for me, what I have chosen as my belief carefully after much reflection. I cannot embrace diversity outwardly until I've built a strong foundation of self-worth inwardly. Because I cannot give to others what I have not given to myself. This requires opening myself to be seen and witnessed by others, especially people who don't look, act, think, feel, believe the same that I do. It's not that I would ever allow their perspective of me to override my own perception, but it's that I hold my own self-perception open. I'm willing to be influenced by others. Those who haven't earned a place of mutual respect in my life, well, I consider their opinion accordingly. Those that I do have more of a connection with, that I know, in the face of disagreement, my heart is always to try the best that I can, to assume the best about them and not the worst. The truth is, we're often triggered because of the deep grooves of our self-invalidation that were carved in us as children. Every single person has had these moments where we traded self-acceptance for external validation, whether that happened through our parents, our siblings, our social circles. It's universal. And our minds learned from that reinforcing the choice of sameness and agreement trumps authentic self-expression. And as children, that had to be the way it was. We needed for our own safety, we needed the validation of our parents to survive. But as adults, we're now unraveling all of that, right? And another point is that the mind itself is designed to be self-validating, which means whatever it believes is true, it's looking for more of that. And life faithfully serves it up. In this experience, we think our beliefs are being validated as true through our experiences. But the greater reality of what's happening is that our experiences are actually being limited by certain beliefs. So until we pause, reflect, and challenge our beliefs as an ongoing practice, we can and sometimes get stuck in cycles of recreating the same lack, the same victimization, the same self-sabotage, whatever that pattern is for us. These patterns aren't wrong, and they're part of life. But that's the journey of self-discovery, isn't it? You know, ultimately, here's the thing. If a leader that I once looked up to and respected has really acted out of accord according to my belief and my perspective, the first thing, of course, is that I need to feel and be honest with myself about my experience 100%. And I'm not making any decisions from that place. When that's clear and I'm back to center again, am I creating space for that leader to learn in my presence, to make mistakes, and to attempt to make them right, or to at least acknowledge their imperfection? Or am I immediately defaulting to separation, judgment, public ridicule of that leader? And, I think there's another layer to this that deeply affects our capacity to embrace diversity. And that is our orientation to life itself. What is your general disposition towards life? Do you feel like life is happening to you? Do you often get knocked off your center by unexpected change? Do you find yourself trying to control outcomes, to minimize pain, and maximize gain or pleasure? And I'm offering that simply to observe that itself is an orientation of being at the mercy of life, one that reinforces a belief structure like dog eat dog, survival of the fittest. And there's nothing wrong with this lens until there is. And that pressure to shift into a new frequency is always there pushing us forward. I certainly know this intimately. It was no easy journey for me to shift out of this orientation. But it is a posture of distrust, rooted in unhealed trauma, which can only be shifted through self-reflection, self-reclamation, and continued healing. The shift is subtle but profound. Life is happening for me, not against me. Even the hard stuff, even the unexpected. And when I live this way, I stop reading challenges as punishments. Instead, I ask myself, what parts of me need love and support right now? What parts of me are being invited into wholeness through this experience? See, I'm not trying to control life, to get it to bend to my will, but rather I'm aligning my will with the aspect of my greater self that wrote the script for my life, that laid out the blueprint. And I'm doing so in a posture of curiosity, humility, and surrender to life. This is how I live now. This is my orientation. It wasn't overnight. It took decades of really hard work. But here is my reality. Whenever I feel triggered, I show up for myself. I stop. I parent myself. I feel. And when it's too much to do alone, I seek support through therapy, coaching, shamanic guidance, peer reflection, and always I bring my divine support team into it, always. Because that simple act, just talking to them, asking, discussing, crying out even, it reminds me I am not alone. I am a multiplicity. I am a team that I can count on. And because I've built this self-love and self-value, I no longer flinch at investing in my well-being when I see that I need it. I see everything as life trying to bring me into further harmony. So when I experience disagreement, discomfort, distress, I'm first being with myself in that, fully honest, but then I'm looking, how is this serving me? How is this, what message is this bringing to me? How is this assisting me to become aware of an aspect that I wasn't previously aware of? Or how is it helping me to refine an aspect of myself that I have been aware of and am continuing to work on? It's no longer about others agreeing with me to validate my beingness, because I understand that none of us see the whole picture, and we're all in a process that is unfolding, and we're all in a process that is unfolding. Because I understand that none of us see the whole picture. We're all in a process that is unfolding, that leads us back to more and more self-awareness and self-reclamation. And their perspective is just as valid to them as mine is to me. And in that, can we not find mutual respect, understanding, and allow one another to expand our own individual capacity to see and know? They are playing out a different script than mine. They're not supposed to think, look, feel, be like me. Am I threatened by this? Or do I embrace it? You know, I feel we have collectively, we've really veered off the way on this one. There's another trend I've noticed. Many people love to say they trust God, whatever they call God. They say, God, take the wheel. But often that surrender posture only comes after all their control mechanisms have failed. That reveals collapse, not trust. I know this. I've lived this. And it's not wrong. It's part of our human process. But sovereignty is different. Real sovereignty says, I trust life. I trust myself. Even my mistakes. Even my missteps. Because it's all learning. And I'm remembering, which means I don't have the whole story yet. And what I give to myself, I can extend to other leaders. Do other leaders have permission to make mistakes and missteps in my presence? Do I afford them the same luxury of learning through their mistakes, the way that I afford that luxury to myself? I think the real shame is believing that we are powerless and subjected to a punitive God or a punishing life that we didn't choose. And this perception is reinforced over and over again in both religious and political ideologies. Even spiritual communities fall prey to all light, no darkness, love and light. BS, right? It's BS because it's not either or. It's both. We are our shadows, and we are also our divine essence in form. Truth is really a life lived. We don't fully know it or see the full wisdom in it until after. This is the basis for how and why I am so adamant about embracing my own truths passionately, yet open-handed, while cultivating an attitude that someone else's truth may be very different from mine. And yet what I call God or Source equally values every life, every soul, every expression of divinity in form. And in this, I can never seek to diminish or take away another person's right to express their truth, even when I feel it is trying to oppress mine. Because there's a deeper truth around that. I don't believe anyone has the power to truly diminish me or take anything away from me that is not already part of the designed blueprint for my life. Any challenge I might encounter exists to invoke my self-awareness. And when I become aware, that pattern is no longer needed for my self-growth. So in this, I can trust life deeply, even amidst hard things, even amidst political leaders gone wild with Dumb and Dumber at the helm, right? Even with the earth being burned and abused. All of the things that we see that challenge our internal hope and disposition that life is self-balancing. Life is carrying us exactly where we need to go. We can trust it. We can trust what's unfolding, even though we don't understand. I'm not ignoring external truths, like laws being changed that seek to limit my freedoms as a woman. But my focus is on my own perspective, my own self-perception, and what I'm choosing to create in response to that external mode of control seeking to oppress me. Do I feel I need to submit, or I'm limited in some way because of these external realities? No, I don't. And these are all the self-questions that lead me back to my seat of power. I'm holding paradox in tension, acknowledging the external while knowing everything is about self-awareness and coming back to my own creation power and my orientation to life. This is how I navigate. And here's what I want you to hear from me more than anything else. You have permission to be fully yourself in my presence. I may not agree. I may not like some things. I may have my own very strong opinions. But you don't need to agree with me. I don't need you to mirror me. Your truth does not threaten mine. And when I am triggered, I will take responsibility. Because my value is not contingent upon your validation. And I hope neither is yours on mine. This is sovereignty. This is wholeness in adulthood. And without it, our world may not make it. So, no, I don't condone evil or atrocities. I do not condone war. But I also refuse to let external programming dictate what I believe is possible. I choose to orient to a higher reality over and over. I choose to come back to trust in life, trust God, trust my oversoul, trust even my mistakes, my imperfections. And in this includes trusting others to seek their own truth outside of my need to control them. Because in the end, what I look for is what I will find. If I'm looking for life to always support me, regardless of what others are doing or saying, if I'm seeking my own authentic voice and expression, if I'm looking for a world full of embodied leaders whose basis for leading is their own embodied integrity, then that affects what shows up in the world. And that's where my focus and my attention are at. That's where I'm casting my vote. And in that, the quantum field takes notice and begins to create what I'm looking for. And I want to live in a world where diversity isn't just tolerated, but celebrated as the very fingerprint of the divine. So I'll leave you with these questions. Where in life do you feel that pressure for sameness or to agree, to feel validated? When someone I respect or admire disagrees with me, does that feel like automatic invalidation, punishment, or evoke my suspicion of them? Is agreement or same belief a major component of my respect towards others? Where am I either cutting off my own discernment or maybe leaning too heavily into my own perspective based on this pressure for sameness or agreement? Can I hold neutrality and paradox amidst disagreement? That's it. I look forward to hearing everyone's perspectives.